Commander Zixatheta stood on the bridge of his warship, the Stellar Defiance, watching the holographic display flicker with another disappointing report. His 6 eyes, arranged in perfect symmetry across his elongated skull, narrowed with frustration. For 3 standard galactic years, he had searched every corner of known space for the legendary warrior spoken of in the ancient prophecies. "Another dead end, Commander," his lieutenant, Vexmar, reported. The smaller alien's tentacles drooped with exhaustion. "The Andromedan Gladiator champion refuses to join our cause. He says the odds are impossible." Zixtheta's mandibles clicked in annoyance. The Devourers were coming, an unstoppable force that had already consumed 17 star systems, turning vibrant worlds into lifeless husks. The Galactic Council had given him one mission: find the prophesied hero who could unite the fractured species and lead them to victory. He had visited the warrior monks of Kepler 442b, who meditated for centuries to achieve perfect combat harmony. They had listened politely, then declined, saying the universe's fate was already written. He had sought out the cybernetic super-soldiers of the Proxima colonies, beings who had replaced 90% of their bodies with weapons. They had run their probability calculations and determined the chance of success was 0.03%. Even the legendary Void Dancers, creatures who could phase between dimensions and strike from nowhere, had turned him away. Their queen had touched his mind with her psychic tendrils and whispered, "The darkness you face cannot be danced away, Commander. We will not throw away our eternal lives for your hopeless cause." "Perhaps we should return to base," Vexmar suggested carefully. "Resupply, reconsider our approach." "No." Zixtheta's voice carried the weight of worlds depending on him. "The prophecy is clear. When darkness threatens to consume all light, a hero shall rise from the most unlikely place, bearing neither crown nor credential, yet carrying the spark that ignites hope across the stars." He had memorized every word, analyzed every possible interpretation. The greatest warriors, the most brilliant strategists, the most powerful psychics, he had approached them all. Each time he presented his case with passion and logic. Each time they had refused. "Commander," the ship's AI chimed, "we are approaching Outpost 779 for scheduled maintenance. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. Zixtheta waved a dismissive appendage. Outpost 779 was a backwater maintenance station, barely worth noting on any star chart. The only thing remarkable about it was its chief mechanic, a human named Jake Morrison, who somehow kept the station's ancient equipment running, despite it being decades past its expiration date. Humans. Zixatheta had considered them briefly early in his search. They were a young species, barely 2 centuries into their spacefaring age. No psychic abilities, no natural armor, no enhanced strength. They needed environmental suits just to survive on most worlds. Their technology was crude compared to the ancient civilizations. He had dismissed them as candidates within minutes of research. The Stellar Defiance docked at the outpost with a grinding screech that made Zixatheta wince. The station was even more decrepit than he remembered. Patches of different colored metal showed where hull breaches had been repaired with whatever was available. Flickering lights cast strange shadows down corridors that should have been replaced decades ago. "Jake'll get you sorted," the station administrator, a nervous Rigelian, assured them. "He's the best mechanic in 12 systems, maybe more." Zixtheta doubted that. If this human was so talented, why was he working on the edge of nowhere? Still, the ship needed maintenance, and they had few options this far from civilized space. He found Jake Morrison in the station's main hangar, half buried in the guts of an ancient cargo hauler. Only the human's legs were visible, sticking out from beneath the massive engine housing. The sound of welding filled the air, along with what Zixtheta's translator identified as humming, some sort of human musical expression. "Mr. Morrison?" Zixtheta called out. The welding stopped. Jake slid out from under the hauler on a wheeled platform that had seen better days. He was exactly what Zix Theta expected, a middle-aged human with grease-stained coveralls, scarred hands, and a face that suggested he'd rather be left alone with his machines. "Commander Zix Theta," Jake said, wiping his hands on an equally dirty rag. "Heard you were coming. The Defiance giving you trouble?" "Routine maintenance," Zix Theta replied curtly. "My engineers will provide you with the specifications." Jake stood, stretching his back with a grunt. He was shorter than Zix Theta by a full meter, unremarkable in every way, yet there was something in his eyes, a sharpness that seemed at odds with his humble position. "I'll take a look," Jake said. "But if you don't mind me saying, Commander, you look like you're carrying more weight than just a ship that needs fixing." Zix Theta's primary eyes focused on the human. "The concerns of the Galactic Defense Force are not your business, mechanic." Jake shrugged. "Fair enough. Just saying, I've been fixing things for 40 years. Ships, stations, sometimes people. You develop an eye for what's really broken." The commander turned to leave, then paused. Something nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't quite identify. "You've heard of the Devourers?" "Who hasn't?" Jake's expression darkened. "Lost my cousin's family when they hit the Vega colonies. Good people, farmers. The Galactic Council believes they can be stopped. We just need the right leader." Jake nodded slowly. "The prophecy. You're looking for your hero. You know of it?" "Commander, I may be stuck on this rust bucket of a station, but I still get news. You've been touring the galaxy for years, trying to recruit every legendary fighter and brilliant mind. How's that working out?" Zix Theta's mandibles tightened. "That is also none of your concern." "Maybe not," Jake agreed. "But while you're here, I've got something that might interest you. Found it in a derelict ship about 6 months ago. The crew was long dead, but their computer core was still active. Had some interesting files about the Devourers." Despite himself, Zix Theta was intrigued. "What kind of files?" "Technical readouts mostly, scans of their ships, analysis of their weapons. Nothing that would help your heroes much, I suppose, but I thought someone should know." Jake moved to a cluttered workbench and pulled out a data pad. "I was going to send it to the council, but the bureaucracy out here—" He shrugged again. Zix Theta took the pad and scanned through the data. His auxiliary eyes widened. This was more detailed information about Devourer technology than the council's best scientists had managed to gather. "How did you interpret these readings? The language is ancient Calorian, yeah. Picked it up from an old trader about 20 years back. You work on enough ships from different eras. You learn to read most technical languages." Jake returned to his tools. "Anyway, your ship should be ready in about 10 hours. My crew's already started the preliminary work." Zix Theta studied the human more carefully. "This data suggests the Devourer's ships use a modulated frequency shield that adapts to any weapon used against it more than once," Jake finished. "Yeah, that's why conventional tactics don't work. You hit them with a plasma cannon, works great the first time. Second time might as well be throwing pebbles. You've studied their technology extensively." Jake laughed, a short bark of sound. "Commander, I'm a mechanic. Everything's just nuts and bolts when you break it down far enough. Even galaxy-eating monsters have to follow the laws of physics." "And do you have theories on how to defeat them?" "Theories?" Jake scratched his stubbled chin. "Sure. But you didn't come here for the opinions of a grease monkey. You want your prophesied hero, someone with medals and glory and a tragic backstory that'll inspire the masses." There was no bitterness in his tone, just matter-of-fact observation. Zix Theta found himself oddly defensive. "The prophecy speaks of a hero who will unite the galaxy. That requires someone people can believe in." "Does it?" Jake asked. "Or does it just require someone who can get the job done?" Before Zix Theta could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The lighting shifted to emergency red, and the administrator's panicked voice echoed through the speakers. All personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple unknowns dropping out of hyperspace. They're not responding to— Oh, gods, it's them. The Devourers are here! Zixatheta rushed to the nearest viewport, his heart sinking as he saw the writhing, organic masses of Devourer ships emerging from fold space. 12 of them, each the size of a small moon, their surfaces covered in grinding maws and reaching tentacles that seemed to hunger for the station itself. We need to evacuate immediately, Vexmar said, appearing at his commander's side. The Defiance can what? Zixatheta asked bitterly. Outrun them? For how long? And what of the 1,000 souls on this station? He watched the Devourer ships arrange themselves in an attack formation he'd seen in too many recordings of Dead Worlds. In minutes, they would begin their feast, starting with the station's shields, then its hull, then every living thing inside. Commander! Jake's voice cut through his despair. The human had somehow appeared on the command deck, still in his work clothes, but carrying a strange device. I need access to the station's shield harmonics, and someone needs to tell every ship in dock to slave their weapons to my control. Are you insane? Vexmar's tentacles writhed in agitation. You're a civilian, a mechanic. Yep, Jake agreed. And in about 5 minutes, I'll be a dead mechanic unless someone lets me try something. He looked directly at Zixatheta. You spent 3 years looking for a hero, Commander. Right now, I'm what you've got. You going to let me work? Or do we all die wondering what might have been? Zixatheta stared at the human. There was no fear in those eyes, just determination and a hint of something else. Excitement, as if Jake Morrison had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Do it, Zixatheta commanded. Whatever you need. Jake grinned, and for the first time, Zixatheta saw past the grease and grime to something else, something that made his prophecy-trained instincts suddenly come alive. All right then, Jake said, moving to the control panel with surprising grace. Let's see if my theory about these bastards is right. And Commander, you might want to hold on to something. This is going to get bumpy. As Jake's fingers flew across the controls, implementing changes that made the station's engineers gasp in shock, Zixatheta remembered another line from the prophecy, one he'd almost forgotten. The hero shall be revealed, not by their seeking of glory, but by their standing when all others fall. Outside, the Devourers closed in, their hungry maws opening to consume another world. Inside, a human mechanic worked with the focused intensity of someone who had found their purpose. The battle for Outpost 779 was about to begin, and with it, the future of the galaxy would be decided. Jake Morrison's fingers danced across the control panel with the precision of a concert pianist. Around him, the station's command center had erupted into chaos. Officers shouted reports, civilians screamed in panic, and warning klaxons blared their endless alarm. But Jake seemed to exist in a bubble of calm concentration. What are you doing? The station administrator had arrived, his pale blue skin now almost white with terror. Those are the shield controls. You can't just— Already did, Jake interrupted, not looking up. Your shields were running on a standard rotating frequency. Might as well paint a target on the hull. I've synchronized them with the magnetic field of that gas giant we're orbiting. Should buy us a few minutes of confusion. Zixatheta watched in fascination as the human worked. Jake had somehow patched his personal datapad into the station's main computer, and lines of code scrolled across multiple screens faster than most species could read. The merchant vessels in dock are refusing to slave their weapons to station control, Vexmar reported. They want to flee. Can't blame them, Jake muttered, but running's not going to work. Those Devourer ships can match any speed we've got. He paused, then spoke into the communication system. This is Chief Mechanic Morrison to all docked vessels. You can try to run and you'll die tired. Or you can give me 10 minutes and your weapons, and maybe we all go home. Your choice. You have no authority, the administrator began. I've got the only authority that matters, Jake said calmly. I'm the one with a plan. He glanced at Zixatheta. Commander, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. At this point, I'm listening to anything. Good. Take your ship and fly directly at the lead devourer. Maximum speed. All weapons firing. Make it the biggest, loudest attack you can. Vexmar's tentacles went rigid. That's suicide. That's distraction, Jake corrected. They've seen the Stellar Defiance before. It's the only real warship here. They'll expect it to lead the defense. While they're focused on you, Commander, I'll be doing the real work. Which is? Jake's grin was sharp as a welding torch. Teaching them why humans put warning labels on everything. Zixatheta found himself matching that grin with his own mandibles. Vexmar, prepare the ship. All hands to battle stations. As his lieutenant rushed to comply, grumbling about insane humans and suicidal commanders, Zixatheta moved closer to Jake. The data you showed me earlier, you found a weakness? Not a weakness exactly, Jake said, his hands never stopping their work. More like a feature they didn't know they had. See, the Devourers adapt to weapons, right? Hit them with the same thing twice doesn't work. But what happens if you hit them with everything at once? Not sequentially, simultaneously. Every weapon type, every frequency, every possible form of energy, all in one massive pulse? The shields would try to adapt to all of them. Exactly. And what happens to any system when you give it too many inputs at once? Zixatheta's eyes widened. It crashes. Bingo. The trick is coordination. Every ship, every weapon, all firing at the exact same microsecond. That's why I need the weapons slaved to my control. Can't trust organic reaction times for this. The first impacts shook the station as the Devourer's initial probing attacks struck the modified shields. Instead of punching through as expected, the attacks scattered across the shield surface in patterns that made no sense. Jake whooped. Yes, the magnetic field integration is working. They're trying to calculate a constantly shifting variable. Should keep them guessing for... He checked his readings. 6 minutes, maybe 7. The Stellar Defiance is ready to launch, Vexmar reported over comms. Go, Jake said. Make it good, Commander. I need their full attention. Zixatheta headed for the door, then paused. If this works, Morrison... If this works, you can buy me a drink, Jake said. Now go. Clock's ticking. The commander ran for his ship, his mind racing. The human's plan was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. But it was more than anyone else had offered. As he reached the bridge of the Stellar Defiance, he found his crew ready, their faces set with determination. All stations report ready, his weapons officer announced. Take us out, Zixatheta commanded. Attack pattern Sigma. Let's give those monsters something to think about. The Stellar Defiance erupted from the docking bay like an angry comet. Every weapon port opened, unleashing a symphony of destruction. Plasma cannons, particle beams, kinetic missiles, even the experimental graviton projector. Everything fired in a continuous barrage that lit up space like a premature sunrise. The Devourer ships, massive and grotesque, turned their attention to this unexpected aggression. The lead ship, a nightmare of writhing flesh and metal that hurt to look at directly, opened one of its continental-sized maws. Inside, reality seemed to twist, preparing to swallow the warship whole. Evasive maneuvers, Zixatheta ordered. The Stellar Defiance danced through space with grace that belied its size, narrowly avoiding the spatial distortion that would have torn it apart. Behind them, the station continued to pulse with its strange, shifting shields. Back on Outpost 779, Jake worked frantically. The merchant vessels had finally given him weapon control. probably after watching the Stellar Defiance's display of courage. 17 ships in total, from tiny courier vessels to massive bulk haulers. Not much of a fleet, but it would have to do. "Okay," Jake muttered, sweat dripping down his face. "Let's see how you bastards handle this." He'd jury-rigged every available system into his improvised battle network. The coffee maker in the break room was now part of the targeting array. The life support systems were calculating firing solutions. He'd even managed to weaponize the waste recycling system, though he tried not to think too hard about that one. "Morrison!" The administrator had given up protesting and was now just trying to keep up. "The shields are failing. Whatever you're doing." 30 more seconds, Jake said. "Just need... there." On his screens, a three-dimensional model of the battle space appeared. Every ship, every weapon, every possible angle of attack calculated and coordinated. It was beautiful in its complexity, like a deadly dance choreographed down to the microsecond. "Commander," Jake spoke into the comm, "on my mark, I need you to break off and run directly back toward the station. Don't slow down, don't deviate. Trust me." "Understood," Zixatheta's voice came back, strained but steady. Jake watched the Devourer's formation. They were confident now, closing in for the kill. 3 of them had surrounded the Stellar Defiance, while the others moved toward the station. Perfect. "All vessels, this is Morrison. Weapons will fire in T-10 seconds. Do not attempt manual control. Do not panic when your ships start doing things you didn't tell them to." He took a deep breath. "And maybe say whatever prayers your species prefers. This is going to be close." The countdown began. Around Jake, the command center fell silent. Even the alarms seemed to quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. 5 seconds. The Devourer's lead ship opened another maw, this one aimed directly at the station. 3 seconds. The Stellar Defiance began its desperate run back toward home. 1 second. Jake closed his eyes and whispered, "Please work." 0. Every weapon in the humans' makeshift fleet fired at once. But not at the Devourers, at least not directly. Instead, they fired at precise points in space, creating a web of energy that used the gas giant's magnetic field as a focusing lens. Beams of different frequencies intersected and combined, creating new forms of energy that shouldn't have been possible. The coffee maker's contribution, a modulated heat beam, merged with a merchant vessel's mining laser. The waste recycling system's output, Jake had converted it into a crude plasma projector, combined with the Stellar Defiance's graviton beam. 17 ships, dozens of weapons, hundreds of frequencies, all hitting the same point in space at the same instant. The result was a pulse of pure, chaotic energy that expanded outward like a soap bubble made of lightning. It washed over the Devourer ships, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then their shields began to flicker, not failing, but stuttering, trying to adapt to every form of energy at once. The organic computers that controlled their defenses, evolved over millions of years to be perfect predators, had never encountered such chaotic input. "It's working!" someone shouted. But Jake wasn't celebrating yet. The shields were confused, not down. They needed something more, something to push the Devourer's systems over the edge. "Commander," Jake called out, "remember that ancient Calorian data? There was something about their ships having a resonance frequency, like a tuning fork. Hit the right note. And they shatter," Zixatheta finished. "But we don't know the frequency." "No," Jake agreed. "But we can find it. Reroute all your sensors to acoustic analysis. Start at the bottom of the spectrum and work up. When you find a frequency that makes their hulls vibrate, hit it with everything you've got." It was insanity. Using precious battle time to run sensor sweeps while under attack. But Zixatheta had come too far to doubt now. "Do it," he ordered his crew. The Stellar Defiance wove between the confused Devourer ships, its sensors singing out in frequencies beyond normal hearing. 1 hertz, 2, climbing higher and higher. The Devourers, still trying to process the chaos of the energy web, reacted slowly. "There!" The science officer's voice cracked with excitement. 17,000 hertz! Their hulls are resonating! "All weapons, retune to 17 kilohertz," Zix Theta commanded. "Fire!" The Stellar Defiance's weapons, now emitting focused sonic energy along with their usual destruction, struck the lead Devourer ship. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The massive vessel's hull began to vibrate, its organic metal screaming in protest. Jake saw the readings and immediately adjusted his own attack. "All ships, modulate your weapons to 17 kilohertz. Pour it on!" The ragtag fleet complied, their weapons adding to the harmonic assault. The Devourer ships, already confused by the shield's scrambling attack, now faced something even worse. Their own hulls were betraying them, vibrating at a frequency that tore at their biomechanical structure. The first Devourer ship cracked like an egg. Atmosphere vented from the fissures, and its internal fluids, best not to think about what those were, sprayed into the vacuum. The creature ship's death scream was transmitted across all frequencies, a sound that would haunt the survivors' nightmares for years. But the others were adapting, beginning to alter their hull compositions to resist the frequency attack. Jake swore creatively in 3 languages. "They're learning too fast. We need—" A new alarm sounded. Jump signatures. Dozens of them. Jake's heart sank. Devourer reinforcements would end them all. But the ships that emerged from hyperspace weren't Devourers. They were a motley collection of vessels from across the galaxy. A Rigelian destroyer, 2 Calorian science vessels, a full wing of Andromedan fighters, even a Void Dancer phase ship. "This is Captain Thavar of the Rigelian Navy." A voice boomed across all channels. "We intercepted your battle transmissions. Thought you might need some help." "The frequency!" Jake shouted into the comm. 17 kilohertz. Hit them before they adapt." The new arrivals didn't hesitate. They'd heard the impossible. Someone was actually hurting the Devourers. Their weapons joined the assault, and space itself seemed to ring like a bell. More Devourer ships cracked and died. The survivors, faced with an attack they couldn't quickly adapt to and now outnumbered, did something they'd never done in recorded history. They fled. Jump portals opened, and the remaining Devourer ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the floating corpses of their siblings. The combined fleet watched in stunned silence as their nightmares ran away. Then the cheering began. On every ship, in every language, beings celebrated. They had done the impossible. They had made the Devourers retreat. In the station's command center, Jake Morrison slumped over his console, exhaustion finally catching up. He'd done it. His crazy, improvised plan had actually worked. "Morrison," Zix Theta's voice came over the comm, filled with awe. "Jake, you did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Jake corrected. "And Commander? They'll be back. This was just round 1. They'll adapt, find ways around what we did. We need to be ready." "Then we'll be ready," Zix Theta said firmly. "With you leading us." Jake laughed, tired but genuine. "Commander, I'm just a mechanic." "No," Zix Theta said, and Jake could hear the smile in his voice. "You're the hero who stood when all others fell. The one who united the galaxy not with words or glory, but with action and ingenuity. The prophecy was right. You were in the most unlikely place." As the Allied fleet secured the area and tended to the wounded, Jake looked out at the stars. The Devourers were still out there, still hungry, still dangerous. But now the galaxy knew they could be beaten, and a human mechanic named Jake Morrison had shown them how. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called so quickly that some ambassadors were still in their sleeping attire. The vast chamber, usually a place of measured debate and careful diplomacy, buzzed with excited chaos. At the center of it all, looking remarkably uncomfortable in a clean dress uniform someone had forced him into, stood Jake Morrison. "This is highly irregular," the Altarian ambassador clicked through his breathing apparatus. "A human civilian cannot simply be appointed to supreme military commander of the combined fleet." "He defeated the Devourers," the Void Dancer representative whispered, her form shifting between dimensions. "That is more than anyone else has managed." "It was one battle," the Altarian protested. "A fluke, a lucky coincidence." Jake cleared his throat. The simple human gesture somehow cut through the alien cacophony. "The ambassador's right. It was one battle. And if I hadn't had Commander Zixatheta's ship running interference, Captain Thavar's reinforcements arriving when they did, and every single person on that station working together, we'd all be dead." He looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes, optical sensors, and sensory organs as he could. "That's the point. I'm not some legendary warrior. I'm a mechanic who got lucky. But I also spent 20 years reading every technical manual, every battle report, every scrap of data about the Devourers I could find. Not because I was trying to be a hero, but because I fix things. And they're the biggest thing in the galaxy that needs fixing." "What do you propose?" The council president, an ancient being whose species predated most starfaring civilizations, leaned forward. Jake pulled out his battered data pad. "First, we stop looking for heroes and start looking for solutions. Every species here has something unique. The Rigelians have the best shield technology. The Calorians have unmatched sensors. The Andromedans can build fighters that dance between asteroids. Humans?" He shrugged. "We're stubborn, and we're good at making things work that shouldn't." "You want us to share our military secrets?" The Proxima Collective's spokesperson sounded scandalized. "I want us to survive," Jake said bluntly. "The Devourers adapt to everything we throw at them individually. So we stop being individuals. We combine everything. Rigelian shields on Andromedan fighters, Calorian sensors in human-designed targeting systems, Void Dancer phase technology integrated into everyone's drives." "Impossible," someone called out. "The technical challenges alone are why you need a mechanic in charge," Jake interrupted. "Look, I've spent my career making parts from different manufacturers, different species, different centuries work together. You know what the secret is? You don't force them to be the same. You find what each does best and make them complement each other." Zixtheta stepped forward. "The human speaks truth. In our battle, he coordinated 17 different ship types, using everything from military-grade weapons to waste processing systems. If he can weaponize a coffee maker, imagine what he could do with our combined fleets." A ripple of laughter ran through the chamber. The image of the galaxy's greatest threat being fought off with kitchen appliances had already become legend. "I have a question," the Andromedan gladiator champion spoke. Jake recognized him, one of the warriors Zixatheta had tried to recruit. "Why did you study the Devourers for 20 years? You were a civilian mechanic on a backwater station. It wasn't your responsibility." Jake was quiet for a moment. "My daughter was on one of the first colonies they hit. She was visiting her mother, my ex-wife. I couldn't get there in time. Couldn't do anything." His voice hardened. "So I learned. Everything I could about them. Their ships, their tactics, their biology. Because someday, I figured someone would need that knowledge." Turns out that someone was me. The chamber fell silent. Here was pain transformed into purpose, loss becoming determination. It was something every species could understand. "I still say this is irregular," the Altarian ambassador said, but his tone had softened. "Everything about our situation is irregular," the council president observed. "Perhaps it requires an irregular solution. I call for a vote. All in favor of appointing Jake Morrison as Strategic Coordinator of the Combined Defense Initiative?" The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was overwhelming. Jake watched the lights tally up and felt the weight of an entire galaxy settling on his shoulders. "Right," he said when the ceremony concluded. "First things first. I need every technical spec, every ship schematic, every piece of research anyone has on the Devourers. We're going to find every weakness, every blind spot, every place they're vulnerable. And then we're going to hit them so hard their ancestors feel it." Over the following months, Jake transformed the galaxy's approach to warfare. He established integration centers where engineers from different species worked side by side, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded for centuries. He insisted on practical testing over theoretical modeling, leading to some spectacular failures, but also incredible breakthroughs. The Void Dancers taught others how to phase shift, not fully like they could, but enough to confuse targeting. The Rigelians' shields were adapted to work with human power systems, creating defensive fields stronger than either species could produce alone. The Calorians' sensors were linked into a galaxy-wide network that could track Devourer movements across vast distances. But Jake's greatest innovation was the simplest. He called it the buddy system. "Every ship pairs with one from a different species," he explained to the fleet commanders. "You learn each other's strengths, cover each other's weaknesses. A Rigelian destroyer's shields protect an Andromedan fighter wing. Human repair crews keep Calorian science vessels running. Everyone has someone watching their back." Not everyone was happy with the changes. Traditional military commanders resented taking orders from a civilian. Some species were reluctant to share technologies they'd guarded for millennia. There were fights, setbacks, and days when Jake wondered if they'd pull together in time. Then the long-range sensors detected it. A Devourer fleet larger than anything previously recorded, over 100 ships heading directly for the galactic core. "They're done playing with the edges," Jake said, studying the data in the war room he'd established on Starbase Prime. "They're going for the heart. Our combined fleet is only 70 ships," Admiral Thavar noted. "The odds are irrelevant," Jake cut him off. "We fight with what we have, but this time, we're ready." He turned to his staff, a mix of species that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Operation Patchwork is a go. Everyone knows their role?" Nods and affirmatives in a dozen languages answered him. The combined fleet met the Devourers at the Nexus Point, a region of space where multiple hyperspace routes converged. Jake had chosen it specifically. The gravitational anomalies would limit maneuvering, forcing a close-quarters battle where coordination mattered more than numbers. Jake commanded from the bridge of the Unlikely Hero. The crew had renamed the station's old cargo hauler without asking his permission. It had been retrofitted with technology from 17 different species, held together by human stubbornness and what Jake called aggressive engineering. "Devourer fleet dropping out of hyperspace," sensors reported. "They've adapted, sir. New hull compositions, different shield configurations." "Good," Jake said. "Be worried if they hadn't learned anything. All ships implement pattern Morrison 7. The fleet moved like a living organism. Void Dancers phase-shifted in and out of reality, planting specialized bombs on Devourer hulls. Rigelian shields extended far beyond their ships, creating protective umbrellas for entire battle groups. Andromedan fighters swarmed through the enemy formation, too small and fast to target, painting targets for the heavy guns. And at the center, Jake orchestrated it all with the same focused calm he'd once used to repair broken life support systems. The Devourers had adapted to the sonic attack, their hulls now resistant to the frequency that had shattered them before. But Jake had expected that. What they hadn't adapted to was the combination of 20 different attack methods happening simultaneously, each one supporting the others. Group 3. Implement thermal cascade on target 7. Group 5. Phase shift and hit them while their shields compensate. Group 1. Graviton pulse in 3, 2, 1. "Mark!" The battle raged for hours. Ships died on both sides, but for every Allied vessel lost, 3 Devourers fell. The enemy tried to adapt, but Jake kept changing tactics, never using the same combination twice, never letting them find a pattern to counter. Then the Devourer command ship arrived. It was massive, dwarfing even the other monsters. Ancient beyond measure, it was said to be the original Devourer, the first of its kind, the hunger that had spawned all others. "All ships, fall back to position Alpha," Jake ordered. "It's time for the finale." "Sir?" Vexmar, now serving as his tactical advisor, questioned. "Our ships are retreating. The Devourers will—" "Follow," Jake finished. "Exactly where I want them." The Allied fleet pulled back in seeming disorder, and the Devourers, scenting victory, pursued. They followed the fleeing ships directly into the gravitic anomalies of the Nexus Point. "Now," Jake commanded. Every ship in the Allied fleet dropped a special package, devices Jake had spent months designing. They were simple things, really, just modified mining charges with Void Dancer phase technology and Calorian targeting systems. But when they detonated inside the already unstable gravitational fields, space itself seemed to scream. The anomalies, artificially destabilized, collapsed into a series of micro-singularities. The Devourer fleet, caught in the gravity storm, was pulled in 1,000 different directions at once. "All ships, maximum firepower on the command vessel, everything you've got." 70 ships fired as one. The ancient Devourer, trapped by gravity and assaulted by the combined fury of a united galaxy, began to break apart. Its death cry echoed across dimensions. A sound of hunger finally ended. The remaining Devourers, witnessing the death of their progenitor, did something unprecedented. They stopped. For the first time in millions of years, the endless hunger paused. Jake keyed the communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Jake Morrison to the Devourer fleet. You've lost. Your command ship is dead. Your fleet is broken. You can keep fighting, and we'll destroy every last one of you, or you can leave, go back to wherever you came from and never return. This galaxy is protected now, by all of us." For long moments, nothing happened. Then, one by one, jump portals opened. The surviving Devourers fled, not in defeat, but in something almost like understanding. The hunger that had driven them was gone with their ancient leader. They were free to choose, and they chose to leave. The Allied fleet watched them go in stunned silence. Then the celebrations began. 6 months later, Jake stood in his workshop on the new United Fleet shipyard. He'd turned down every medal, every title, every honor they'd tried to give him. He was back in coveralls, working on a new fighter design that incorporated the best of 7 species technology. "You know," Zixatheta said, entering the workshop, "most legendary heroes don't go back to being mechanics." Jake looked up from his work and grinned. "Good thing I'm not a legendary hero then. Just a guy who fixes things." "You fix the galaxy." "Nah," Jake disagreed, returning to his welding. "I just showed folks they could fix it themselves if they worked together. The real work's just beginning. We've got to stay united, keep improving, be ready for whatever comes next." Zixatheta watched the human work, understanding finally why the prophecy had led to this unlikely hero. Not because Jake Morrison was the strongest or the smartest or the bravest, but because he was a mechanic. He saw problems as things to be fixed, not obstacles to fear. He understood that sometimes the best solution came from combining mismatched parts in ways no one had tried before. "The Council wants to know what you need for the new defense grid," Zixatheta said. Jake considered. "Coffee maker from Earth, Rigelian tea brewer, and whatever that thing is the Void Dancer's drink. If we're going to keep the galaxy safe, we need the important stuff." Zixatheta laughed, a sound that would have been impossible a year ago when he was consumed by his desperate search. "I'll see what I can do." As the commander left, Jake returned to his work, humming tunelessly. Outside, ships from 100 worlds worked together, building something new. The galaxy had found its hero in the most unlikely place, not on a battlefield or a throne, but in a workshop, covered in grease, making broken things whole again. And somewhere in the void, other threats stirred, other hungers awakened. But the galaxy was ready now. They had learned the most important lesson Jake Morrison had to teach. Alone, they were just parts. Together, they were unstoppable. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not by a warrior's sword or a diplomat's words, but by a mechanic's wrench and humanity's stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly unfixable. In the end, that was the most human thing of all.